Hello, what is going on, ladies and gents? A lot of stuff's happened. Clearly shaved. Um, I don't know if I like it or not. Also got fired from my job. That's super fun. But I got more time to do this shit now, so can't really complain about that. But still gotta find a job here in the next little bit because money. But anyways, let's get into the reaction video. I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but we'll figure it out. All right, so I just found a little video. Figured it'd be a bit interesting.
Disturbing urban legend.
Oh my god, that was loud. Jiminy crickets. Urban legends that turned out to be true. Let's get some learning going.
That turned out to be true. The stalker under the bed. You and your best bros are having the time of your lives at a sleepover at your friend's house. And it's that time of the night, just after video games, but just before sleep, that you and all your friends take turns telling your favorite ghost stories. And all is well. That was until one of your friends whips out this bad boy. A ghost story about a girl who's home alone. And this girl is receiving threatening texts. Texts about how this man can see her. And while this girl...
So basically a ghost scenario. I'm still concerned by the title, Stalk Under the Bed. Also, what's this interior, by the way? Who just goes white on white on white on white on white and a little bit of gray? This is what the fucking thing I hate about modern houses. It is just so fucking ugly. And a white fan, too. And why do these hang so low? You're gonna hit your fucking head on it.
Is at home alone, she's slightly scared, but also takes it as a prank until the person texting her tells her what she's wearing. And then later reveals that he's not only watching the girl, but he is in the girl's house.
Oh, that's
At least
lovely.
to me, growing up, I've heard so many variations of that sort of story. You know, the killer, the stalker, the creep being in the
Jeff the Killer. Okay, one thing that terrifies the ever-living shit out of me. Here, let me search this really quick. I'm just gonna pop up the image just to scare you guys. Pretty sure y'all will know who I am talking about. Grand reveal. Boom. Hate it. What the fuck? People are into some weird ass shit, man.
house of the innocent victim. And I'm assuming you probably have too.
What the fuck are these interior? How small? That's the fucking Michael Scott The Office picture, or not picture, the TV.
At some point in your life.
Oh my god.
In my opinion, it's a ghost story staple. But believe it or not, the urban legend being told in that ghost story may not be a situation that only exists in scary stories after all. And that's because in 2014, a very real news story broke about an 18-year-old man doing something almost identical to the stories we heard growing up. Let me set the scene. It was the 3rd of July in 2014. Jane was a 16-year-old girl living in a small town in England. And she had just recently had a...
Oh, is she from England, bruv? You gonna give her a proper poking? She don't got fucking rifles over
breakup
there.
with her boyfriend, who she said was becoming a bit controlling.
Oh,
Following the breakup, the 16-year-old Jane and Kyle Ravenscroft, her 18-year-old ex-boyfriend, remained in contact, and things seemed to be cordial enough. Although, when Kyle got word that Jane began talking to other boys, he became extremely upset. And it was on that fateful night, on July 3rd, that his conversations with her went...
How dare she talk to other fucking men? Oh, God. Like, I don't get how people get in these fucking fits of... Oh, that's lovely. My girlfriend just sent me a picture of her coochie hair. Anyway. Oh my god. 2014. How old was I at the time? I was like 4. It's 2026. 2016 was 10 years ago. So that's 12 years ago. So I was 8, 9. I was 9.
went from being casual to downright disturbing. The messages from Kyle started with threats of violence.
I was literally just, oi, mate, I'm gonna bash your fucking head in. Come on, brother.
With Kyle claiming that he was going to bash in Jane's head for talking to other boys. But because at this point, unfortunately, Jane was familiar with his controlling and abusive behavior, she knew the best thing she could do was ignore him. Although, because Kyle wasn't getting the reaction he wanted, he decided to up the ante, no longer sending threats of physical violence, but simply making vague, ominous statements.
Okay, so this is all full of horse shit. It's Tuesday, innit? XX. I might be outside your house or not. I'm close to you. Okay.
With one early example being, I'm on the grounds, essentially claiming he was on Jane's property. And while that seemed unlikely due to the fact that Jane lived 2 hours away by foot and Kyle didn't drive, she didn't put it past him. And for that reason, she was reasonably scared. And as the night went on, she decided to spend the night not in her bedroom, but in her mother's bedroom. All throughout the night, the texts from Kyle continued getting more and more disturbing, claiming that he was close to Jane, that he could see Jane, and eventually claiming he was in Jane's house. And while this was all terrifying, Jane decided to ignore his threats and his messages altogether and get a good night's sleep. The following morning, Jane had returned to her own room, feeling slightly relieved that nothing actually happened. That was until she sat on her bed and decided to start
felt a
texting her
hand
friends
grab her.
about how crazy her ex-boyfriend was being. But it was while she was in her room alone, texting her friends, that she felt off, and she felt like she was being watched. Which is why she got up off the bed and decided to do a quick once-over of her room, looking behind the curtains in her closet and eventually looking under her bed. She noticed that the bins and shoeboxes typically under her bed were not in their usual spots. And because of that, she decided to move them, look behind them,
bam.
and there she saw her crazy stalker
Ew.
ex-boyfriend laying under her bed. And it was eventually discovered
That's just nightmare fuel. Like, the amount of times that I've just checked under my bed just because I wanted to. But I don't think anything would be under there or could fit underneath there. But still, it's just the thought of motherfucker underneath there. I just, oh. I hate what humans are capable of.
that he had been there all night. When Kyle claimed that he was on the grounds, he wasn't bluffing. He was literally in Jane's yard looking in the windows. And when she went upstairs to sleep in her mom's room, Kyle took that as the perfect opportunity to hide in her bedroom, assuming she would return at some point. However, luckily, she didn't. And almost as soon as Jane discovered Kyle under her bed, Jane's mom walked in the room and let him have it. She began yelling at the man, telling him he needs to leave immediately. And while there was no further altercation, the man did steal Jane's phone and then leave immediately. The trespassing, coupled with the now theft, obviously led Jane's mom to call the police. And the police took this seriously, and that same day visited Kyle's house. However, when they knocked on his door, he fled, only to shortly after turn himself in. But his time behind bars didn't last long, as he was quickly bailed out and told to never speak with Jane again. However, almost instantly after being bailed out, he hand-wrote a letter to Jane and hand-delivered it to her at work. This letter was a formal request to see her in private so he could properly say goodbye. And while that in itself is threatening and ominous, quickly after this letter incident, he was arrested once again. But in case that's not crazy enough, what's also crazy is the fact that you likely haven't seen a doctor in a very long time.
my
and while easily
God.
and conventionally booking a doctor's appointment might seem like an urban legend,
appreciate
with
it.
today's video channel. And now,
If you need a quick doctor or something, doc.
let's get back to it. It's time. You're on thin ice, pal.
I'm kidding, don't go to an actual doctor unless it's actually reputable.
He also was given 80 hours of community service and was forced to take a course on how to act properly in social settings. In my opinion, I think giving this guy another chance after he already instantly broke bail conditions the first time was risky, to say the least. However, I didn't find any follow-ups about him breaking his suspended sentence, so I guess that's at least fortunate. Regardless, it's crazy to me how you can literally break into somebody's house, send them threatening messages, stalk them, break your probation conditions, and essentially be told, hey, don't do that again. I'm extremely glad that nothing worse happened in that situation.
Yeah,
However,
it
just
could have
because
been
it didn't
worse.
happen doesn't mean that what did happen was okay. I can only
Yeah.
imagine how traumatizing that situation was for Jane and how unsafe she must feel in her own house at times. But bringing it back to your boys at the sleepover, well, to you guys, telling scary stories might just be a form of entertainment. To some people, the scary stories you tell is somebody else's disturbing reality. And if we've learned nothing else, sometimes when you're at home alone and you can't help but feel like you're being watched, there is a chance that you just might be. The alligator.
Don't
man.
put that
The
on me.
age-old story of a villain keeping dangerous animals around for the sole purpose of either killing or consuming the dead bodies of their victims, at this point is a cliche.
Oh, like the
We saw
fuckers
it
with
in
the
Star
pigs.
Wars with Jabba the Hutt and the Rancor. We saw it in Tiger King with Carol Baskin and her tiger. And there is countless movies and cartoons that include a villain that has either a shark pit or an alligator pit that exists solely for the consumption of the body of their dead enemies. But what if I told you that this cliche was more than urban legend, and very much so happened in real life? And what if I told you that this real-world example was so prolific in
pig.
fact that it actually inspired a very famous horror movie? Well, I hope you would believe me, because unfortunately that
Well, it
is
says
the case.
alligator
So
man,
let me break
so
it down
probably
for you.
not.
Almendorf, Texas is a small and quiet town just outside of San Antonio that was established in 1885. However, in the late 1920s and early 1930s, rumors began to spread of some odd happenings within the town. And it was these rumors that later became legend. At the center of these rumors was a man named Joe Ball. Joe was born in 1896, served in World
Joe
War
Ball.
I, was a full-time bootlegger during Prohibition,
Damn.
and eventually opened up his own tavern and inn following the Prohibition era.
What an
And it
American.
was during the time that Joe Ball owned this tavern, known as the Sociable Inn, that women in the town of Almendorf mysteriously started to go missing. Joe Ball was described by locals
Oh.
as a creep. He had weird tendencies and engaged in some rather weird activities. And possibly one of his most public displays of his unique personality was what would happen every Saturday night at his tavern. It has been reported that every Saturday night, Joe Ball
Someone
would host
goes missing.
what he called a live feeding. And essentially what that would consist of is everybody in the tavern getting as drunk as possible and then bringing in any live animal they could find, whether it be a raccoon, a stray dog, a stray cat, and throwing it into the alligator pit that was at the tavern. Oh yeah, and I forget to mention,
Oh.
Joe Ball also kept 5 live alligators in a pit just outside for marketing purposes, allegedly. And as you can likely presume,
Allegedly.
it was this alligator pit that was the core of these legends. And when you think about it, it starts to make a lot of sense. Joe Ball was not a stranger to throwing live things into the alligator pit. Joe Ball had alligators, period. Sus. And now women in the town were going missing. And people were starting to mumble about where people could potentially be going, insinuating
Well,
that
yeah,
that
the
place
alligator
was the
pit.
mouth of these alligators. But it didn't take long for these rumors and legends to soon become something more disturbing. According to records that were put together in the early 2000s, it is believed that there's potentially up to 20 people that were associated with Joe that had gone missing over the course of the tavern being open. And
those
these included
alligators were
primarily
fed.
former employees and former lovers. But for many of these
Employees?
investigations that took place on the disappearances of locals, whenever Joe was questioned, if he was questioned, he either knew nothing or had a story about his employees simply skipping town for one reason or another. And for a long time, this excuse was satisfying for authorities. However, in 1938, when the families of 2 missing girls were not satisfied by that answer and kept pressuring authorities to look deeper into it, authorities started to look deeper into Joe. And these deeper investigations started to show some writing on the wall. At first, investigations were similar to the ones they had previously, a simple conversation asking him if he knew anything. At first, Joe played dumb, but when he was met with evidence about these missing individuals that didn't match his story conveniently changed. Although, without any true evidence from the authorities, they couldn't do anything. However, fortunately, somebody from Joe's past was able to make a breakthrough in this case when he informed the authorities that he personally witnessed Joe feeding human flesh to his alligators. And now, armed with an eyewitness account, the authorities went back to Joe's tavern, not to ask him more questions, but to inform him that they were going to be taking him to San Antonio for further investigation, as they believed that Joe was not telling the full truth about these missing individuals that just so happened to be involved with Joe.
Yeah,
but
no
it was
shit.
during this visit that things took a dark turn, as after authorities told Joe that he was essentially arrested and being taken to San Antonio immediately, he requested that the authorities at least let him close the bar quickly before they take him away. And while they honored that
Oh, he's
request,
getting rid
they
of
likely
evidence.
shouldn't have. Because almost immediately after walking behind the bar, Joe reportedly downed a full beer, opened up the cash register, pulled out a firearm, and then self-destructed, launching a bullet directly through his heart.
He killed
dying
himself.
instantly. Following these shocking actions that Joe Ball just did, it became obvious to authorities and to locals that he was much more involved than he was leading on. For that reason, the authorities began searching every square inch of Joe's property, trying to find any evidence on where these missing individuals could be. On the property, they didn't find any bodies specifically, but they did find piles of miscellaneous meat placed around the alligator pit and a blood-stained hatchet that was covered in unidentified hair, which initially led the investigators to believe that Joe was killing, cutting up, and throwing the victim's body parts into the alligator pit. However, it wasn't until they questioned a former employee of Joe, a living one, that another wrench was thrown in the entire situation. While this ex-employee was brought to San Antonio and being questioned, he revealed that while working for Joe only a year prior in 1937, he personally helped Joe get rid of the body of one of his ex-barmaids and ex-lovers. And to prove his involvement, he showed authorities exactly where the body was hidden. Interestingly, buried in the ground and not fed to the alligators. This ex-employee of Joe's was questioned about the other people that had gone missing, potentially 18 more. However, this ex-employee claimed that he had absolutely no knowledge of it, and authorities believed him. That individual
But bro, you
served
just
2
said
years
that
in
you
prison
helped.
as an accessory to murder. But to this
Okay.
day, we are still not sure what happened to the other individuals that went missing in Elmendorf. Personally, I think it's very likely that at least at some point, Joe threw the body of one of his victims into the alligator pit. And I think the fact that he was a proven murderer and also was throwing in live animals, including puppies and kittens, into that pit every weekend bolsters my theory. However, I do think it's odd that for the 2 murders that he
Sociopath.
was proven to have committed, the alligators were not used in the disposal of those bodies. But that could just be a coincidence. But yeah, as far as true urban legends are concerned, the urban legend and rumor that Joe Ball was the killer was proven to be true. And the urban legend of him feeding the bodies of his victims to his 5 pet alligators, while remains unconfirmed, in my opinion is very plausible. However, with lack of records, due to this case taking place in a small town almost 100 years ago, we may never know the truth for sure. And in case you were still curious, the film that was inspired by the story of Joe Ball is known as Eaten Alive. It came out in 1976 and was made by Willard Hooper, the same man that made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The North Pond Hermit. There is something so unique about large, isolated wooded areas that simply breeds the necessary existence of
I don't know, because like there's specific areas. Like I went camping recently, absolutely gorgeous spot, but I mean there's like not a whole lot of animals that we saw besides like deer, squirrels. Saw a fox pulling up, but like it's not bear country. I don't think there are cougars out there, but I don't know. I mean, still, I get pretty paranoid at shit at night. I mean, when I went to Hawaii and I was swimming around the ocean snorkeling, I mean, not seeing that much further distance from you in the water, you maybe see like 50 feet, and then beyond that, it's just darkness. It's just that part freaks me out.
some sort of urban legend or mythical creature.
The
In Washington
Mothman.
and many other states, you have Bigfoot. In Missouri and Arkansas, you have the Ozark Howler. And for a long time in Maine, you had the North Pond Hermit. All of these unique locations and legends had their own lore and theories and sightings. And while many of these urban legends have their own validity and followers that believe them firmly, not many of these legends have come to such a provably definitive answer like the legend of the North Pond Hermit has. North Pond is a geographically beautiful location located in Maine's remote wilderness. And it's because of its natural beauty and isolation that it is a popular spot for private cabins, seasonal rentals, and camping. However, in 1986, a strange trend began to happen that would go on for decades. According to people who owned cabins in the area, seemingly at least annually, and in some cases even more frequently without fail, the summer cabin that they owned in North Pond would be broken into. But over years of break-ins and over widespread break-ins across numerous properties, trends began to become obvious. For starters, damage during the
motherfucker had
break-in
to
was
live
typically
near
at a
there.
minimum, with locks being picked or jimmied open to access the cabin, and inside the cabin, most things at most would just be moved around. If they weren't stolen, of course. And interestingly, over time, as these cabin owners would talk to each other, they would notice similar trends. For instance, some individuals noticed that whoever was breaking into all of these properties every year
Just
really
stealing
enjoyed
food.
peanut butter, but really did not enjoy tuna fish, as tuna fish was always moved but never stolen. And others noticed that if there was ever a battery in the cabin, it would not be after a visit from the North Pond Hermit. And it was because of the sheer frequency and consistency of these break-ins that locals
That's
began to
interesting.
speculate about what exactly could be going on.
Just
And it was
selling
from
them
the
'cause he's a
speculation that
tweaker.
bred the urban legend of the North Pond Hermit. Some individuals believed that none of these break-ins were connected whatsoever, and that it was always different robbers breaking into different houses, and there was simply a crime issue
Yeah,
in
but
this
it's just
area
so out of
because
the
individuals
way.
knew that for a large
the
portion of
thing.
the year, these cabins were left vacant, making them prime targets for breaking and entering. Others believed that something more supernatural was at play, claiming that there potentially was some sort of spiritual creature, like a Bigfoot at play. And they believed this because they thought that there was simply no way that this could be one person, or even a group of people for that matter. There was too much frequency, too much consistency, and after multiple decades of this going on, there's no way that one person or
It
one
was
group
probably
of people
just
could
some
keep up
fucking
the same
homeless
act
dude.
for so long with all of the same trends without ever being caught. Regardless of what you believed, from 1986 to 2013, the legend of the North Pond Hermit only began to grow. And the story eventually spread from being a local rumor to a nationwide phenomenon, with its notoriety approaching the levels of other famous urban legends.
That's
we've
crazy. I
discussed
haven't
on the
heard
channel.
anything about
but
that.
while we all love a good story, and I'm sure that this urban legend was definitely good for tourism to some degree in the area, the reality of the situation was people that owned cabins in North Pond were consistently and routinely having their privacy violated and their items stolen. And for decades, there was simply no answers on who or what was doing this. Some individuals who owned cabins in the area claimed that they sold their cabin simply because
Fair
they did not
enough.
feel safe going to it, not knowing when this person or thing would come back. And others who kept their cabins claimed that they never felt safe enough to stay there overnight and only would stay there for day trips, which is truly unfortunate. And while at surface value, it may seem dumb to sell a property or not stay overnight at your own property due to what was believed to be a urban legend, when you are facing the very real consequences of said
Yeah,
urban
but the
legend,
fucker keeps
that
coming
response
back.
seems a lot less irrational. Now, with all of that being said, it would finally be in 2013 when the entire legend of the North Pond Hermit and this string of burglaries would finally come to an end. When on April 4th, 2013, a local game warden would capture a mysterious man breaking into a camp using motion detection devices. And after this mysterious individual was arrested and questioned at
Thank
the
God.
jail, the entire story
I am
and
the
legend of
hermit.
the North Pond Hermit was blown wide open. And he essentially confessed to being the North Pond Hermit, an individual that everybody knew, but nobody could identify. And it turns out this urban legend was not legend at all. And it turns out that it was actually a very real individual named Christopher Thomas Knight. Knight was born on December 7th in 1965.
He was just
And
living
only a
out
few
in the
months
fucking
before
woods.
his 21st birthday, he decided that he
Yep.
no longer wanted to participate in society. And in 1986, headed into the rural woods of North Pond, Maine, with basically nothing more than the clothes on his back and the glasses on his face, and he lived completely off-grid, sustaining himself solely with items he stole from cabins from the years of 1986 to 2013,
That's
when he
wild.
was caught. During his investigation with the police, he didn't give a clear motive of why he wanted to opt out of society, but he did confess to over 1,000 burglaries, claiming that he would commit roughly 40 burglaries per year to sustain his life, and also claiming that he did feel bad about the burglaries, although it is hard to take that seriously considering he did do it, 1,000
Many times,
Knight
yep.
also went on to claim that he would only move at night to ensure he was not detected, he would never light campfires to ensure he would not draw attention to his camp, and he also revealed that for the 27 years he lived off-grid, he basically saw nobody ever, claiming
Damn.
he only ever said hello to one hiker he ran into one day. On screen now are pictures of Knight's camp setup, and while it looks like an entire mess, this was able to sustain his life for decades. And surprisingly, he was able to live in a cheap nylon tent in temperatures that dropped below 25 degrees Celsius, which to
pretty
this
gnarly.
day still remains a mystery. After the news made headlines that the North Pond Hermit was not only real, but captured, there was a huge response among locals, and thoughts on the situation varied drastically. Some believed that Knight was a hardened criminal who deserved to spend the rest of his life
think
in
he's a
jail. And
well-
others believed that Knight was simply a man trying to live off the land, and he only stole things from individuals because he had to survive, and that he
Fair.
truly meant no harm, and for that reason deserves no jail time. Personally, I think I'm a bit in the middle between both of those, but I'd be curious to know what you think. Regardless,
Of course you're on
after
the
the
fence.
arrest and subsequent confession, Knight served 7 months in jail, was forced to pay $2,000 in restitution to victims, and had to complete a co-occurring disorders court program. A court-appointed program that's typically meant for people with substance abuse or mental health disorders. And finally, was served 3 years of probation as well. Following his time in jail, Knight was extremely reluctant to do any interviews, any press, or answer
Well, I mean,
any
yeah, he hasn't
questions
been
at
in
all.
society
which is why to
for,
this
like,
day, we
10,
still know
20
very
years.
little about his motivations or his experience.
Like, you
literally
can't
lived-
expect a motherfucker like that to just out of nowhere be wanting to talk to people you know, especially at such a young age, he rejected society and just decided to. I really think he was just stealing out of the fucking cabins. I really doubt he tried to live off the land. I mean, just considering the amount of burglaries he's done. But I mean, I don't know. Like putting a guy like that on probation and he might just be out, you know, and he doesn't have any money for sure. He's been living off the land for fucking more than 20 years. So I don't know. It's just like, how do you punish someone like that, you know? Because in general court proceedings, you're, you know, basing it off of people in society, not, you know, people who live off grid. It's just an interesting little, I don't know. It's an interesting thing about law.
Living off the land for 27 years and surviving. However, we do have one quote from him that I do find to be particularly interesting. It's reported he once said, quote, "Solitude bestows an increase in something valuable, my perception. But when I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. There was no audience, no one to perform for. To put it romantically, I was free." After Knight was released from jail, he met with the judge.
That does make sense, because you wouldn't really have a sense of self because you're not around people to kind of base yourself off of. Because in that case, if you're just out there alone for 20 years, you're basically an animal. Just in like a tiger, you're just solitary. And it's interesting how humans can get in different mindsets like that. It's honestly fascinating.
Every week, he avoided all alcohol and he even secured a job with his brother. And to this day, while not much is known, it is believed he lives happily in rural Maine, living a relatively reclusive life, although nothing like the near 3 decades he spent living in the woods. And while there's a lot that we can take away from the story, I think one of the biggest takeaways is that the next time you're hiking in the woods with your friends, if one of your bros
be careful of a
suggests that
hermit.
there might be a hermit or a witch or a wizard or even a ghost inhabiting these strange, eerie, and isolated woods, they could very well be right. But speaking of
There's always
right,
that
if you're
random
enjoying this
motherfucker.
video, you should definitely leave a like or subscribe right now if you
Sure,
haven't already. I make really
sure.
cool videos every single week. And if you want more videos about urban legends that turned out to be true, let me know in the comments by telling me part 2, or just leave a like so I know that you guys really love this topic. Right now, we're on the road to 2 million subscribers, and YouTube tells me that only 30% of the people watching this video are actually subscribed. So if you like what we do here and want to support absolutely free, you know what to do. And with that, let's get to the final section of this video. Dishwasher death. If you lived in
What?
the US or Canada in the early 2000s, then
I
there's
was
a good
ready
chance
for
you
some crazy dishwasher
probably
death.
had a unique rule in your kitchen growing up. That rule being no running in the kitchen, either A, ever, or B, when the dishwasher is open. And the reason for
Fair,
this
you'll
that I
kick
was
your
always told was
cankles.
that if you're playing in the kitchen when the dishwasher is open, that there's a chance that you could fall into the dishwasher and land on a fork or a knife and die. And while growing up, this definitely sounded scary, as I grew up, this seemed more and more like an urban legend than something that actually ever happened. And while as I got older, I did see the value in
I bet there's
lying
always
to
that
kids
one
about
random
innocent
case.
things for the sake of their safety, it turns out that there is an unfortunate reality behind this rather obscure urban legend. And I kind of say obscure lightly, because I know some of you watching definitely grew up with this rule, and I know
See this? No. This? Yes. See, the wood's very nice here. I don't know about that. I mean, it does give a woody vibe, but then you have tile here. It's a little interesting. I would rather just go with like a just plain, or either just like complete with the wood.
others watching have
I
never
don't know why I'm doing fucking interior design.
heard of such a rule or urban legend before. Regardless, this urban legend at least grew enough notoriety to be covered by Snopes. And if you're unfamiliar with Snopes, it's essentially a fact-checking website. And the conclusion that Snopes came to about this entire situation was that it wasn't an urban legend at all. It was simply genuine words of warning from people who actually lost loved ones due to accidents that took place in the kitchen, with the most notable example taking place in 2003. According to investigations into this rumor, it was proven that in 2003, a 5-year-old girl named Peyton McElroy tragically lost her life due to a fall she took onto an exposed knife in an open dishwasher. It's reported that the accident took place while she was playing near the kitchen as the dishwasher was being unloaded. At some point during her playing, she made her way into the kitchen and unfortunately tripped and fell onto the open door of the dishwasher. And in the cutlery rack was a large knife that was placed blade up. The injury this young girl sustained as a result of this fall was almost instantly fatal, as the knife pierced multiple vital organs. And it was with the sheer tragedy and also rarity of this situation that caused the initial widespread coverage of the original cautionary tale turned urban legend. And for clarification, the reason why I'm categorizing this as an urban legend is because over time, as this story was told through word of mouth, there have been so many different exaggerations of the story, and many of the people who claimed the dangers of having children around open dishwashers don't even know the origin of where this cautionary tale came from, making the story more based in legend than reality, as people who share it in recent years, while giving valuable good advice, for all they know, could be referencing a situation that never happened, although unfortunately, it did happen. And even though I think we'd all prefer this urban legend to be an urban legend, this cautionary tale, unfortunately, has grim roots based in reality. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for that video. Trust me, bro. Damn. Yeah, don't run around with your fucking dishwasher out. Oh, that was a really, really cool video. I thought it was just gonna be doing more like creepypasta shit, but no, that was pretty rad. All right, well, that concludes that video. So, I hope you wonderful ladies and gentlemen have a wonderful good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and I will see you in the next one.